Boys, girls, babes, welcome back to the Janae Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in today. And before we get started on what is going to be a wild ride of an episode today, it is our special trade deadline episode. And there is a lot going on around the league and certainly with our own Washington Capitals. But just before we start, I just want to throw out a quick reminder. Please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already done so. We've made it really easy for you, kind of like scoring a goal against the Boston Bruins. Yes, it is that easy, as we are available now across pretty much all major platforms. Those being, of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podcast Addict, Deezer, etc., etc., etc. And I just wanted to say that we really do appreciate all of the interest and all of the love that we've been getting lately. It has truly been amazing. And again, we appreciate it so much. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Okay, so trade deadline, am I right? Yep, it's been a pretty eventful couple of days here for the Washington Capitals. Pretty crazy this year. So we'll start with our own Washington Capitals. We're going to talk not only about them, but about the rest of the East Division and the rest of the league as well. But yeah, for our own Washington Capitals, small moves first. The first thing that the Caps had done was about a week ago now, but they had placed forward Richard Panik on waivers. Panik had been a healthy scratch recently, and his contract carries a $2.75 million cap hit for 2 more seasons still after this one. So the Caps, they placed him on waivers to clear some cap space, and that also tells me that they were not 100% sure that they were going to be able to find a taker for Panik's contract ahead of the trade deadline. But, waivers, it wasn't ideal. It was better than nothing, of course, as you do get some cap space from that, but you don't rid yourselves of the full cap hit the way that you would if you can find a trading partner who will take him. So they freed up some cap space ahead of the trade deadline by doing that, but not the full $2.75 million. So Panik, he cleared waivers. And, I just want to say, it's not that he's not a good hockey player. He is a good hockey player. He's an NHL player for sure. It's just that with the pandemic, with the salary cap remaining flat, other teams, they don't have cap space for a seldom used depth player the same way that the Capitals don't have cap space for a seldom used depth player. So he went unclaimed on waivers, and that's where we stood on that. Spoiler alert, until today, but we will get to that. It was a big one, so we're saving it for last. And another smaller move for the Caps, they traded depth defenseman Jonas Siegenthaler to the New Jersey Devils in exchange for a 3rd-round pick, essentially, again, to clear up some cap space both now and in the future. So we know now that the Caps wanted the freed up cap space in order to make bigger moves on deadline day. We had speculated about that initially when it first came out that Siegenthaler had been traded, and we were pretty sure of ourselves, as we always are, but we know it for absolute certain now. And again, I will get to those bigger moves in just a moment here. But yeah, they freed up another $800,000 of cap space for right now by trading Siegenthaler, and more than that, they also gave themselves more freedom and flexibility for next season as well, as Siegenthaler will be an RFA again this offseason, and he would have commanded a raise. So the Caps, who are tight to the salary cap and who have other more important things to consider, more pressing needs, such as re-signing Captain Alexander Ovechkin. Maybe you've heard of him. So they don't want to be tied into a situation with Siegenthaler where he's getting more than they can afford to pay him. And so now, what would have happened essentially is he's an RFA. He would have obviously commanded more than they can afford to pay him. And so now they wouldn't have been able to re-sign him, and they potentially lose the asset for nothing. Either that, or they have to trade someone else in order to re-sign him. Maybe someone that they would rather not trade. So it's good asset management here. As Siegenthaler, he was the 8th defenseman right now on this team. So, it's good asset management for sure. Getting a 3rd round pick for him. It's not as if it's a 7th round pick either. Like a 3rd round pick is a pretty good pick to get here. And so they get a decent return for the asset, and they avoid that bit of salary cap trouble in the off season. And they were never going to pay Siegenthaler what he wanted as an RFA anyway, by the way. Prior to this trade, like I said, he had been, first of all, he had been a healthy scratch in 30 of the last 31 Capitals games. And the one game that he did play, it was only because the Caps were short some players, so they were going with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen, if you remember. And so Siegs, he dressed for a game as the 7th defenseman, and he played just one single shift right at the end of the game when the game was already over, less than 30 seconds of ice time. So, I know fans in any sport, we tend to get attached to players, we get sentimental, and we tend to way overvalue our own assets. But Siegenthaler had been surpassed on the depth chart by a number of guys. Like I said, he was number 8 on the depth chart for this team right now, and that's even with Michael Kempny still being unavailable due to injury. He's due to come back soon, so it looks like it anyway. He's back on the ice now, practicing once again. So the Caps have used the same 6 defensemen all season long, which is awesome, and Siegenthaler was not one of them. And even amongst the healthy scratches, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, he was ahead of Siegenthaler rather, on the depth chart as that number 7 defenseman, the first guy who would come in the case of an injury or whatever, COVID-19, whatever it may be. And so the Caps, they just recently locked up Van Riemsdyk to a 2-year contract extension, an extremely reasonable cap hit, by the way. So the rating was kind of on the wall for Siegenthaler here. Certainly when Van Riemsdyk re-signed for 2 more years, you could kind of see this coming in a sense. So there was simply no way that the Caps were going to give him the cap hit that he would want, and that he probably deserves, by the way, too, in a few months as an RFA, and nor should they. Nor should they give him that money, with him being the number 8 defenseman on this team. And let's not forget, the Caps also have a couple of studs in Martin Fehervary and Alexander Alexeyev awaiting their turn in the NHL as well. And they're both left side defensemen as well, same as Siegenthaler. So they're also, Fehervary and Alexeyev, they're also both projected to be much better players than Siegenthaler, much more upside, much higher ceilings at the NHL level. So it was a move that made sense. And please, like I said, let's not ridiculously overvalue our own assets. It's not a good look, for fans on Twitter or wherever. It's not a good look. So let's be better than that. Trading your 8th defenseman is never going to kill you. No one has ever died from that, as far as I know. Knock on wood. Anyways, like I teased earlier, it is clear as day now that these cap space clearing moves were part of a bigger plan for Caps general manager Brian McClellan. So let's talk about what we are going to call the big one. That's a term that people here in Vancouver, we use it to describe forthcoming earthquake. So that's something that apparently is supposed to happen sometime between today to the next 600 years from now or something. So we call that the big one, but for now we're going to refer to this trade as the big one because right around the 3 p.m. Eastern Time deadline for trades today, the Caps announced a mammoth of a deal with the Detroit Red Wings. So our Washington Capitals, they acquire the Detroit Red Wings' best player and leading goal scorer, winger Anthony Mantha, in exchange for wingers Jakub Vrana and Richard Panik, as well as a first-round pick in 2021 and a second-round pick in 2022. This was a blockbuster. So, let's talk, Caps fans. Let's gather around, have a little therapy session here, because I know most of us really love Jakub Vrana, right? He was a really popular player for the Caps with a great personality. I actually met him immediately after the Caps had won the Stanley Cup in Las Vegas. We were at Game 5, and then we met Vrana and some of the other Caps players at their hotel afterwards, and I just cannot say enough nice things about him. He's a super nice guy, super good to the fans. He was, taking pictures with us, stopped to chat with us, goofing around with us. He even did some pretty horrible dance moves for us. So, I love him not only as a player, but as a person. So obviously, sentimentally, this sucks, and we are really going to miss the man that we called Flying V. But if we take off our sentimental glasses for just a second here, then I actually really like this deal for the Caps. And there's more than one reason why I like it, so I will try to explain most of them here right now. First of all, the Caps are getting the best player in this deal, and that's Anthony Mantha. If you haven't really watched Mantha play before with the Detroit Red Wings, then I suggest you go, after finishing listening to our episode here, to look at some of his highlights, because he is a really, really good player. He's an exciting player. And while both Mantha and Vrana can obviously score goals, Mantha does it in a totally different way than Jake does. They're totally different players, and I think the Caps definitely wanted somebody more like Mantha, especially for the playoffs, which I will get to here. But yeah, two totally different players. And like I said, they both score goals. They're both good shooters, great shooters. But Mantha is a huge, behemoth. Like he's huge. He's an imposing power forward. He's 6'6" and 234 pounds. He plays his game with a lot of power. It's actually pretty similar to the way that Alex Ovechkin plays the game, just in terms of being that big-bodied, true power forward with the heavy shot. And Mantha has a wicked shot, by the way. Caps fans are going to absolutely love watching that. He does it from the opposite side that Alex Ovechkin does. Mantha, a left-handed shot. But yeah, just in terms of being that pure natural goal scorer, he's a lot like a miniature Alex Ovechkin in that way. Obviously not miniature literally in stature, as like I said, he's 6'6" and 234 pounds. But I just mean miniature as in, like, I'm not saying that he is Alexander Ovechkin. So let's make that very clear. Alex Ovechkin, he's the greatest goal scorer the NHL has ever seen, and that will be in writing in a few years when he breaks Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record. So yeah, I'm not going to disrespect Alexander the Great by directly comparing anyone to him. All I'm saying is that Mantha's style of play is very similar to that of Alex Ovechkin in a number of ways. And it's funny, actually, because I've actually had my eye on and kind of been pining for Mantha for a long time. I always wish that the Caps would somehow find a way to get him. I didn't think it was realistic for the Caps to get him. Certainly not while he's 26 years old and in the prime of his career, as it's not too often anymore these days anyway, in the salary cap era, that you see these actual quote-unquote hockey trades taking place. So I had resigned myself to the conclusion that it was probably just a pipe dream, but I really like the player and have for a long time, so I am stoked. He's got a really high ceiling, a ton of potential to have a very big impact on this very good Capitals team. But yeah, a couple of things that I've seen out there on the old internets, particularly on Twitter, as per usual, with some perennially pessimistic, Caps fans. You'd think that would have worn off, right, after we won a Stanley Cup. But no, I see some people saying, oh, great, we traded a younger player for an older player. Folks, I don't know if you knew this, but if you looked it up at all before commenting, the difference in age is only a year. Mantha is only 26 years old, and Vrana is 25. So that's pretty much a wash. And please don't come at me with this is just like the Forsberg for Erat trade. This is nothing like that at all. These two players are a year apart in age. They're, very similar in terms of their production. It's not anything like Forsberg for Erat. And also for anyone saying, I don't like it because Vrana has more points than Mantha this season. again, folks, you have to watch the games, right? Like, the fact is, one of them played on the second highest scoring team in the entire league, with a guy like Nick Backstrom passing him the puck. And the other played in Detroit with no one to pass him the puck. And yet they have identical goal totals with 11 each. And they have identical even strength goal totals as well, with 9 each. And I mentioned that because that's something that, of course, we've always loved about Jakub Vrana is his even strength scoring. He was second on the Caps this season behind cyborg Alex Ovechkin with 9 even strength goals. Mantha, he's got 9 even strength goals this season too, even while playing, like I said, on a seriously shitty Detroit team. So, like I said, if you watch the games, if you've watched Mantha play, then you already know that he's a better goal scorer than Vrana. They're different players. Mantha, like I said, is 6'6", 234 pounds, a power forward, and a real, true, pure goal scorer. I love Vrana, obviously. He was actually one of my favorite Capitals, so sentimentally, like I said, this one hurts. This trade hurt me. Like, it hurt me in my heart. But we are a better team today than we were yesterday. And especially if we're talking playoffs. Because Vrana, for all of his potential, for all of his speed and his flair and his trademark breakaway goals, the one thing that he's consistently failed to do over the last couple of seasons since the Caps won the Stanley Cup with him as a rookie is to deliver something, anything in the playoffs, right? Like, in the 15 playoff games that Vrana and the Caps had played over the last 2 postseasons, Vrana had 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 points. You simply cannot go from being a 25 goal guy in the regular season and then put up absolutely nothing in the postseason. And certainly not for multiple postseasons in a row when you have a really good team that has a legitimate shot at winning another Stanley Cup. Just can't do it. Specifically, in the Caps bid to repeat as champions in 2019, tight series against the Carolina Hurricanes. It goes to Game 7. Game 7 then goes to double overtime. That series never even should have gotten to a Game 7. Alex Ovechkin and Nicklas Backstrom were so ridiculously good in that series. They were by far the 2 best players on the ice for either team. It wasn't even close. TJ Oshie goes down and out with an injury, and you're looking at a guy like Vrana to provide something, anything, in the way of depth scoring after he's so good in the regular season. And like I said, the Caps didn't need much with how well Ovechkin and Backstrom are playing. Even just a couple of goals from Vrana in that series would have tilted it in the Caps' favor, and we're off to the second round. But he just didn't provide anything. And so you're thinking, that that's a fluke. But then again, in last year's playoffs, same thing once again. So I think that definitely did factor into this decision for the Caps as well, is that they are thinking about the postseason. They're not thinking about the regular season. They have more than enough in their lineup to get through the regular season without a problem and probably win the division title again. So they're not looking for regular season performers. They're looking for playoff performers. And Vrana simply hadn't been one over these last 2 postseasons. Not even close. And Bob McKenzie was on TSN today, and he said that he was talking to some general managers around the league after the Mantha deal had gone down, and that what they were all saying is that if Mantha plays to his potential on a good team now, then watch the fuck out, man. Like, they all said when Mantha's on his game, he's a much better player than Jakub Vrana, much more impactful, and that his game and the way that he scores goals is much more built for the playoffs. So I think from the Caps' point of view, that's exactly what they're going for here. They wanted someone who will do it in the playoffs too, not just in the regular season. And Mantha's game, like I said, is much more well suited to that. And not just his offensive game, by the way, but his defensive game as well. Like his physicality, his play along the boards, along the wall. It's everything. He's much better in his own end than Vrana is, so I'm sure that was attractive to the Caps as well. Fewer turnovers, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on and on. I just think in all 3 zones, they really thought that Mantha would be a better fit for their team and a better fit for the playoffs. So I have to agree too. Like I said, as much as I love Jakub Vrana, there's certain things about his game that are just like, it's just not good enough, right? Like, his board play is a big one. Very, very weak along the wall, along the boards. So that's something that Mantha brings that. Like, he's a big dude and he wins a hell of a lot of one-on-one puck battles. So, he's winning pucks. He's getting the puck back for you, and that's helping you to create more offense. So, not that the Caps really need more offense, but you can never have enough, right? So, and the other side of it, of course, in this deal is the money. And the best way to think about this, I think, is to think of it as two separate trades, because the first part of it is you've included an extra draft pick in order to get the Detroit Red Wings to agree to take Richard Panik's contract off of your hands. I mentioned it earlier, but he still has 2 more seasons remaining after this one at a $2.75 million cap hit, and the Caps simply can't afford to be wasting that much cap space, and especially not when they have other players who they'd rather have in their lineup. That's why they had waived Panik initially, was to be able to bury at least part of his cap hit in case they couldn't find a trading partner to take him. But thankfully, they found one in the Detroit Red Wings. But you have to give a little something to get some help back in return, right? Like, Steve Yzerman is not an idiot. He's not doing it for free. And so we always knew that was going to be the case, no matter which team you were dealing with. So that's just the way that it is around the league. And even more so right now in a pandemic world where the salary cap is remaining flat. Something that no one could have foreseen, but the salary cap space right now, it's at a premium, and so you have to give something in order to entice a team to help you out by taking a bad contract off of your hands. And so, that's exactly what the Caps did with the Red Wings. They gave them an extra draft pick, essentially as a thank you for bailing us out of Panik's contract for this season and for the next 2. So like I said, think of it as 2 separate trades. You give the Red Wings a draft pick so that they'll take Panik off of your hands, and then you trade Vrana and the other pick in order to get Anthony Mantha, who, like I said, is the best player in the deal. And when you break it down like that, it really makes a ton of sense for both sides. So the Caps, they saved some money against the salary cap, and they will be saving even more next season and beyond, because you really can't discount what we call the cost certainty in this situation. Anthony Mantha is locked up for 3 more seasons after this one at a very reasonable cap hit for what he brings, $5.7 million per season. So you're already saving money with his contract after removing Vrana's and Panik's contracts. Panik, again, who was a healthy scratch. But like I said, you'll be saving even more money beginning next season because Vrana is an RFA this offseason as well. He's arbitration eligible, so he's going to be getting a big raise on what he's already making now. So for the Caps and for GM Brian McClellan, McClellan, by the way, he mentioned it in his press conference today as well, that the cost certainty of knowing what Mantha's cap hit looks like for the next 3 seasons after this one, that is a very big deal, especially because, like I said, you knew that Vrana is going to be getting a hefty raise, and so you probably would have been in trouble with the cap with having to extend Vrana. Plus, nothing against Vrana, like I said. I love Jakub Vrana, but we all know who the Caps' priority is in terms of an extension this offseason, and that's Alex Ovechkin, and as he should be their priority, that goes without saying. I love Jakub Vrana, but I would still throw him under a bus if it's a choice between a contract for him or a contract for Alex Ovechkin. So it makes a lot of sense money-wise as well, and for what it's worth, because I see some folks stressing about this, you should not be stressing about giving up a first-round pick in this year's draft. Everyone, scouts, general managers, etc., they all agree that this was already going to be a weak draft class, and then you throw in the pandemic and teams not being able to scout prospects properly, and suddenly it gets even worse. So it's going to be a total crapshoot at the draft this year. So it is very significant in this deal that the first round pick is for 2021. I would have liked the deal a little bit less if the first was for 2022. So Anyways, the Caps, they made one more trade on deadline day as well, acquiring forward Michael Raffl from the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for a 5th-round pick in 2021. But that one kind of went under the radar with the Mantha Vrana swap. So, but yeah, that's a good depth add for the Caps. He's always been a pain in our ass whenever we've played against him, so it's always nice to pick up those types of players. He probably won't play unless someone gets injured, given how ridiculously good the Caps' fourth line has been, but it's good to have a guy like that ready to step in case of injury. And now looking around, we've pretty much finished with the Caps here for deadline day. So looking around the rest of the East Division now, I will try to just give you the significant trades here. Although you do have to be careful with that because none of these big guys in the mainstream media, none of them thought that, the Caps trading for Michael Kempny at the 2018 trade deadline, for example. And none of them, thought that was of any significance at the time. He was, Kempny, he was a seldomly used, mostly healthy scratched 7th defenseman for the Chicago Blackhawks at the time. And then he came over to Washington at the deadline, and all of a sudden he's playing on the top pairing alongside of perennial Norris Trophy candidate John Carlson, and the Caps are winning the Stanley Cup. So I would call that pretty significant. And in hindsight, so do those big guys in the mainstream media. But yeah, so you do have to be careful with picking and choosing what's significant at this time of year, because really, who's to say for sure? We often don't find that out until a little bit later, once we're playing playoff hockey, of course. And so you don't want to be one of those broadcasters who ends up with egg on your face at the end of the playoffs after claiming that, Kevin Shattenkirk to the Washington Capitals, for example, is the missing piece, and that's undoubtedly going to lead to the Stanley Cup for the Caps in a few months. Fuck Kevin Shattenkirk, man. And besides, so often at this time of year, it is the smaller deals that make the difference and lead to a positive outcome. It's not very often at all that a big name acquisition at the trade deadline actually pays off. I think if you're searching for and willing to pay trade deadline prices for that big name guy, it's probably because you have a pretty significant hole to fill in your lineup somewhere. And so you're just hoping that this big name new guy is going to come in and within a short couple of months gel perfectly both on and off the ice, and that he's therefore going to fill that hole for you. But that's usually not how it works. It's a lot to ask of a guy to fix all of your problems in just a short couple of months, to fit in perfectly with no real time at all to get acclimated. And so I think generally if you have that big of a hole in your lineup, that you're out fishing for that big name guy at the trade deadline, then it's probably not a very good sign for you or for your lineup. And I think that that's probably why the smaller names, the lesser known, lesser talked about deals like a Michael Kempny, are usually the ones that make the biggest difference and that see the biggest positive results in the playoffs. Because those teams who are making those smaller deals are usually already pretty good teams. Their lineup is already pretty good, so they don't really have any big holes to fill. They're just kind of tweaking. That being said, the deal that the Boston Bruins made on the eve of the trade deadline, as an example, that would not fall into that low-key smart deal category. They went for the big name in an attempt to address their scoring issues. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for you. So Taylor Hall, he is a Boston Bruin now. Taylor Hall is supposed to fix Boston's scoring issues. Taylor Hall has 2 goals on the season. 2 goals in 37 games. He would be on pace for 4 goals over a full 82-game season. Do you see where this might be a flawed plan by Bruins general manager Don Sweeney? And my favorite part of this whole thing is the Bruins fans who are trying to say, oh, sure, Hall only has 2 goals, but that's because he was playing for the Sabres. He didn't have any good players around him. He's going to have way better players around him in Boston. He's going to have way better line mates. He's going to have a way better centerman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, excuse me, people. He's going to have better line mates. He's going to have a better centerman now in Boston. You delusional nitwits do realize that Jack freaking Eichel was his centerman for much of the season in Buffalo, right? Like, yeah, I know Eichel got injured and everything, so he's missed some time. But still, of the 37 games that Taylor Hall has played this season, Jack Eichel was his centerman for 21 of them, or roughly 2/3 of the season. And Hall still has 2 fucking goals on the season. A blind nun could score 2 goals playing 21 games next to Jack Eichel. But yes, by all means, let's fix our scoring issues by trading for the guy who has 2 goals on the season. Great plan. So just for argument's sake, who is Taylor Hall going to be playing with in Boston who's better than Jack Eichel? David Pastrnak has been utterly useless when removed from Patrice Bergeron in an attempt to spread out the scoring for the Bruins. Pasternak's got 4 even strength points in his last 18 games. Those are 4th line on the Detroit Red Wings type of numbers. So if you're Bruins coach Bruce Cassidy, spreading out the scoring only works if a guy like Pastrnak can be, even mildly competent without being carried by a guy like Bergeron, which I think Pastrnak has proven now he is not even mildly competent without Bergeron. So you have to keep that Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak line together, which means that Taylor Hall will be playing with David Krejci as his center. Krejci, who ironically has put up the exact same goal total as as Taylor Hall has this season, with just 2 goals through 35 games played. So hey, Krejci took 2 less games to do it, to get those 2 goals, than Taylor Hall did. Taylor Hall's played 37 games, but Krejci as well, he'd be on pace for 4 goals over a full 82 game season. They both would, like I said. So let me ask you this. Is David Krejci better than Jack Eichel? You don't have to answer that, folks. It's rhetorical. These Bruins fans are on crack. Anyways, I think we can all agree, right, that Taylor Hall is who you trade for if you want to win the draft lottery, not if you want to win in the playoffs. The guy has tanked absolutely every NHL team he's ever played for. Oh, but he was really good in juniors, though. Do you hear that? That's the sound of my eyes rolling. Anyways, the Bruins better be careful here because they looked like absolute shit versus our Caps on Sunday. That was an 8-1 win for the Caps in Boston, in case you missed it. Bruins play-by-play guy Jack Edwards was really stoked about it. If you want to really, make your own day, just go to YouTube and go to the highlights. You just hear Jack Edwards getting more and more depressed with every Capitals goal that's scored. It's really something. And the Bruins are a rather meek 5-5 over their last 10 games. So 5 wins, 5 losses, playing .500 hockey. And meanwhile, the New York Rangers are coming on, man. They are not going away at all. They were pretty far behind at one point, but they're really making a push here now that Artemi Panarin is back. Goalie Igor Shesterkin is back. He's a stud. Love him. And Mika Zibanejad has found his scoring touch once again after starting the season rather slowly. So the Bruins, you might actually have to start winning some games here if you want to even make it to the playoffs. Never mind winning a round or 2. Of course, I should mention that the one saving grace for Boston right now is that the other team that's chasing them for that final playoff spot, the Philadelphia Flyers, they're playing like hot garbage too, so it kind of all balances itself out there. The Flyers, they just lost to the Buffalo Sabres, which is obviously extremely hard to do. You really have to be committed to sucking in order to lose to the Sabres this season. So props to Philly for staying committed on that one. But yeah, the Rangers are hot, man. And for me, I'd actually much rather that the Bruins get that last playoff spot if the Caps are going to remain in first place in the East, because we match up really, really well against the Bruins, and we match up terribly bad against the Rangers. So I would much rather that we play Boston in round 1 instead of playing the Rangers. We will see how it all shakes out, though. The Bruins, they also traded for defenseman Mike Riley coming over from the Ottawa Senators. Jeff Carter got traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for a 3rd-round pick in 2022 and a 4th-round pick in 2023. And let me just say, I love you, Caps fans. I really do. But I really don't understand how so many of you on Twitter, it's like, if anyone even so much as suggests that the Caps might trade for an old, slow, often injured and past his prime player, such as Nick Foligno, for example, as that was one of the rumors there before the trade deadline. But yeah, if anyone suggests that the Caps might do that, y'all are already on Twitter, crucifying Caps general manager Brian McClellan for it, even before we even know whether the damn trade is even true or not, which in this case it wasn't, regarding Foligno. So, and yet when the Penguins do it with Jeff Carter, who was also old. He's 3 years older than Nick Foligno, actually. And he's also slow and often injured and past his prime. When the Penguins do the exact same thing, suddenly it's genius. Suddenly it's pure gold. I don't get it. I love you guys, like I said, but y'all need to make up your minds. Either you want the old slow guys or you don't, but it can't be genius when the Penguins do it and total crap if the Caps do it. Shit or get off the pot. Pick a lane. Yes, Carter at this stage in his career is old, slow, often injured, and way past his prime. It was 7 years ago, and he was 29 years old when he was last contributing to a Stanley Cup win. He is 36 years old now and has had countless injuries slowing him down since then. The Los Angeles Kings, as a result, have tanked. So the New York Islanders, they trade for Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac from the New Jersey Devils. The Devils get a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and 2 prospects in return. That one, good deal for both teams. Both Palmieri and Zajac will be UFA at season's end, so the Devils get a good return for them. And for the Isles, this is them attempting to find a replacement for their captain, Anders Lee, after they found out that he will miss the rest of the season with a lower body injury that requires surgery. So the Isles, they also traded for defenseman Braden Coburn from the Ottawa Senators. That's more of a depth move. And so we move over to the Central Division now. Former Stanley Cup winner with our Caps, Brett Connolly, he is on his way to the Chicago Blackhawks after being traded by the Florida Panthers. He just never really meshed well with the Panthers. He never really found his footing there, which has kind of been true for him with, basically every NHL team anyway that he's ever played for, other than our Washington Capitals. So maybe he should have stayed in Washington for a little bit less money. But defenseman on the move in the Central Division as well. The Florida Panthers traded for Brandon Montour from the Buffalo Sabres. Tampa Bay Lightning traded for David Savard from the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's a nice pickup for them. It cost them a first-round pick, though, as well as a third-round pick. And you just know that the Lightning are cheating the salary cap here, which is supposed to be illegal, but you can't really prove it. But we all know, right, that Nikita Kucherov is going to, magically become healthy, 2 days after the regular season ends, and the salary cap is no longer a thing. You just know it, right? I would bet money on it. So very convenient for the Lightning that he's not healthy 2 days before the regular season ends, because then his cap hit would count and they would be in trouble. So yes, that's very convenient indeed. And the Nashville Predators, they traded for Eric Goodbranson from the Ottawa Senators. That adds a little bit of muscle to their lineup. The Blackhawks, they also traded that's right. Just looking, I thought I missed a trade here, but no, the Blackhawks, they also traded essentially a half-eaten bag of peanuts to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for forward Adam Gaudette. Another great return brought in by Canucks general manager Jim Benning, she said sarcastically. The Panthers, they also acquired forward Sam Bennett from the Calgary Flames. That's a nice add for their upcoming playoff run. And then moving along to the West Division, Stanley Cup favorite Colorado Avalanche. They made 3 separate trades. First, getting big defenseman Patrick Nemeth from the Detroit Red Wings. Then getting goaltender Devin Dubnyk from the San Jose Sharks. That's some nice goalie insurance for a team that has former Capital Philip Grubauer unfortunately getting injured too often these days. And having injured goaltenders really screwed them over in the playoff bubble last season. So, that's good for them right now to add some insurance in case it happens again with Grubauer. Dubnyk is certainly a decent insurance policy. And then they got forward Carl Soderberg from the Chicago Blackhawks. Another Stanley Cup favorite, the Vegas Golden Knights. They traded for forward Matthias Janmark. That's all they did at the deadline. And then finishing up with the Canadian division, the North Division, the no defense division. But yeah, the North Division, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they traded for forward Riley Nash from the Columbus Blue Jackets. They also traded for goaltender David Riddick from the Calgary Flames. There's a lot of concern right now surrounding regular starter Frederik Andersen's injury. Leafs general manager Kyle Dubas has said that they don't really have a timetable for his return. And the Leafs media is calling it the big one, but I'm not sure I agree with that. Actually, no, you know what? I am sure. I know that I don't agree with that. But anyways, the Leafs also traded for forward Nick Foligno from the Columbus Blue Jackets. So they are calling that their big one. I'm not really sure. I'm a little bit confused as to why the Leafs are trading for more forwards. They already have too many forwards and not enough defense. And Leafs fans are out here on Twitter like, oh, good, Foligno will be good at the front of the net on the power play. Great. Like, excuse me, folks, but isn't that exactly what you already got Wayne Simmons for? You can't have them both out there standing in front of the net on the power play at the same time. You could, but it would be stupid. So the price for Nick Foligno was a first-round pick, as well as 2 fourth-round picks. That's, pretty laughable. The Leafs had to do it that way because they had no cap space. So they needed the San Jose Sharks to come into the deal and retain some of Foligno's cap hit for them. So they had to send another fourth round pick to San Jose in order to entice them to do that for them. So the Caps, they had been linked to Foligno, but thank God that they did not pay that ridiculous price for him. The Montreal Canadiens, they made a couple of nice depth moves for themselves on what is already a strong back end for them, acquiring defenseman John Merrill from the Detroit Red Wings, and then defenseman Eric Gustafsson from the Philadelphia Flyers. The Winnipeg Jets, as a contender to come out of the North Division, really didn't do anything of significance, which had their fans quite upset. And the Edmonton Oilers, likewise, they really didn't do anything. They added one defenseman, Dmitry Kulikov from the New Jersey Devils, so not really a noteworthy defenseman. But yeah, that's it. That's all they did. They needed to do a lot more than that. It's another wasted year of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That catches you up on all of the trade action. Like I said, I tried to kind of weed out all of the crap and just give you the significant trades. We'll see in a few months if I, was right about what's significant and what's not significant. It could come back to bite me in the ass. But anyways, that's all we've got for you today, folks. So yeah, it's been a crazy time, the trade deadline. But, as always, I just want to say again, thank you all very much for listening, especially as I know that we're all mourning right now a little bit, the loss of Jakub Vrana. So I know sometimes when I'm sad about something to do with the team, I don't really want to listen to, Capitals podcast or Capitals talk or anything like that. So thank you very much for still being here, for still listening. We really appreciate you. And again, I know I mentioned it at the top of the episode, but please do make sure to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. We are available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on Podcast Addict, on Deezer, etc., etc., etc. Like I said, pretty much anywhere and everywhere that you would get your podcast from, we are on there. So subscribe, Share us with your family and your friends and your fellow Caps fans, your fellow hockey fans in general. As you can see, we do talk about other teams as well, and we will have some fun, talk some hockey, babes. Until next time, Caps fans, stay classy, stay healthy, stay safe, and as always, let's go Caps. Cannot wait to get a look at Mantha in a Caps jersey. They're saying, that he could be ready to go, assuming no travel delays, that he could be ready to play against Philadelphia at Capital One Arena. That's on Tuesday, so that will be fun. Until then, chat with you later, babes.